All right, we're live. So, hello and welcome to this special interview with Dr. Elliott Gish. And Dr. Gish, would you mind just start by telling listeners a bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, of course. So I have a PhD in psychology with a specialization in consciousness, spirituality, and integrative health, and a concentration in dream studies. And I got all that because I was interested in lucid dreaming when I first started into graduate school. Um, I got interested in lucid dreaming because of Inception. I don't know if you've seen that movie, Jesse. Have you? Yeah.
Of
Oh, yeah.
course,
Of course.
Leonardo
Yeah. It's
DiCaprio, you got to see
Yeah,
it.
it's a classic, right? So I was undergrad studying psychology because I was always fascinated with how people think and why they think the things they do and that sort of thing since I was a kid. So I was always interested in psychology and doing research into psychology, but I didn't know exactly what topic I wanted to research. And then about junior year came along and Inception came out. So I rented that, got it, saw it, and I thought I'd never had a lucid dream myself.
Did you say
So yeah,
rented?
I rent. This
I'm
shows the
sorry,
age,
you're
right?
showing our age.
No,
Yeah,
this
wait a
this
minute.
shows the age a little
Delete.
bit.
Just kidding. Go
Redbox,
ahead. Sorry.
Redbox is how. Yeah,
So
back when Redbox was a
Netflix,
thing. Yeah,
Netflix before it
yeah,
was
exactly.
Netflix.
Yeah. Um, Rented it on Redbox, saw it, and then that opened my world to the concept because I didn't even know lucid dreams were a thing. I had never had one. No one had ever talked to me about lucid dreaming. None of the psychology courses in college had ever mentioned lucid dreaming. So that introduced me to the concept, and I thought, is this real? Is this fake? What is real and what's fake? Because all this is Hollywood, right? So then I started Googling, just all I could. And then I realized it was a real thing that you could learn how to do it. It wasn't just some people who did it occasionally, but it's a skill that people could learn. So I became obsessed. I taught myself, and then I just started going nuts with it. After having that first experience, that's really what drove that passion. I figured there might be something here. And of course, during the Googling experience, there's a lot of misinformation on the field, right? A lot of misinformation on lucid dreaming out there. So I was always trying to separate fact from fiction, right? And me being kind of a researcher, I fell back on the science. I was always curious on what science had showed. And there was a decent amount of science, not a huge field by any means, but there was a decent amount of science there. So that's what got me my interest peaked. And then from that point, I figured there's a lot more research that needs to be done. I saw a lot of potential with that capability. So I decided, why not dedicate the rest of my life to researching it, helping other people experiencing it. And yeah, so that's kind of the background.
That's really fascinating. Thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, that's really what gets you hooked, right? Is that first experience. So I'd love to hear
It
just a
is.
little bit more about what that was like for you, or maybe even backtracking and talking about your journey towards lucidity once you discovered that it existed.
Yeah, of course. So for me, like I said, I'm not a natural. So once I learned about lucid dreaming through Inception, I had to figure out how to do it. Right. So Googling all the stuff that I could and trying everything that I could. It took about a month to get to my first lucid dream. And I was going all out. I was
That's
doing
really good.
everything.
I think that's, just through sheer will, I think a month is, I would consider it above average.
It's not bad. It's not bad. If I do say so myself. Yeah. Yeah. I was putting in a lot of work though, Jesse.
So tell us what that looks
Meditating
like.
all
I'm
this.
so curious.
Yeah.
Meditating, cool.
Well, there was a lot of meditation involved. There was a lot of refocusing on the sleep and dreaming portion of my life, which was pretty neglected up to that point. So, a lot more awareness in those sleeping and dreaming hours, a lot of dream journaling, that sort of thing. But yeah, it was several hours every day and night of practices to get that first lucid dream. Now it's a lot easier having had hundreds of lucid dreams and kind of refining techniques and that sort of thing. But
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. What I really love about what you said, I mean, ironically enough, coming from the night owl, is I want to hear more about the daytime practice. So that's why meditation catches my eye, because that's like a real life
Mhm.
practical skill you can use that's conducive to lucidity. So are
Yeah.
there any other practices you would do? I mean, everybody thinks of dream journaling as like a nighttime thing, but I think there are other journaling practices you can implement to also
Yeah.
help your daytime regimen. So do you have any advice for those thoughts?
Well, I mean, in general, mindfulness is a great practice. We kind of already are seeing in the science that mindfulness is very similar to lucidity, because mindfulness is kind of being in the present moment, right? And that's what lucidity is. It's being so much in the present moment that you realize that you're actually in a dream, which we usually overlook. So yeah, any sort of mindfulness practices, whether it be it meditation or yoga or other things, it's a great way to really start on that journey of lucid dreaming and trying to intentionally induce more lucid dreams.
That's awesome. I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that personal insight. I myself am a big fan of meditation, specifically dream yoga. So it's funny you mentioned those two things hand in
Okay.
hand for
Yeah.
mindfulness. And my dream yoga practice looks a lot like trying to stay awake while falling asleep.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I've never had any success with wake induced lucid dreams, unfortunately. That's been
Yeah.
very difficult for me in my experience.
Hmm.
But what Dream Yoga does actually is allow me to implement a bit of a relaxation routine. So it's more about
Hmm.
shutting
Yeah.
down, my brain and winding down for bed.
Yeah.
So again, thank you for that. So we talked a little bit just about your background. So now I'd love to hear some more about your work in this field. You mentioned that you focused your thesis on lucid dreaming. Is that correct?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
tell us a
Yeah.
little bit
So
about that.
yeah, of course. So, a master's thesis was on just an autobiographical case study of myself trying to
Cool.
induce more lucid dreams. So, kind of putting together a few certain techniques that have been in the literature to shown to increase lucid dreaming, and trying that on myself and seeing how well that worked. And it was halfway decent, but I was kind of a novice at the time, only had a few dozen lucid dreams. And between the techniques that I used, I think within 2 weeks, I had two wake initiated lucid dreams and one dream initiated lucid dream. So, not half bad for a beginner,
That's great.
Yeah, that was a master's thesis. And then on the dissertation side, I looked at chronic pain relief through lucid dreaming. So I was more interested in the application side. What are the potential benefits of this skill, and how can people use it to their advantage? And chronic pain being one of those things that millions of people suffer with every year, unfortunately. So if we can provide some alternatives to that, especially non-pharmaceutical alternatives, then that would be a great option. So it's kind of an exploratory study into the potential of using lucid dreams for chronic pain relief. And there were also halfway decent results with that too. So I'm
Wow.
interested to explore that line of research a little bit further and potentially help people in suffering from chronic pain.
That's a beautiful story, and I think that's such a strong motivation. Thank you for that. Thank you for your contribution already.
Yeah, yeah, of
Um,
course.
are you familiar with mythology at all? Greek mythology?
Yeah, uh-huh.
To just change the subject slightly.
No, no, feel free.
How about Asclepius? You know who that is?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
yeah, often referred to as the 13th sign or Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, right?
Yep.
So ancient practices and a bit of a cult-like following, they actually really intended to use dreams of healing to, actually most often visualize the god coming to them and presenting,
Yeah,
a solution for their healing. So
that's
I
right.
think that's
That's
it's
right.
it's grounded in history that's important research right there what you're doing, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
interesting accounts, like healing the blind, written, carved in stone. So I'd love to see, where
Exactly.
you take that in the future.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm
I
hoping to
heard,
take it hopefully literally here soon because I'm getting married here next year. And
congrats.
what we're hoping for, we're kind of planning on at this point is a honeymoon vacation to Greece, in part to see the Asclepian dream temples, because that's kind of on my bucket list of things to do before I die. And I'm sure you might be well aware, but there is an intersection here between medicine and dreams, because the Asclepian dream temples, from what I understand, were built to honor the god Asclepius, but they were essentially used as kind of a catch-all for people who couldn't get satisfactory answers with medicinal doctors. They would go to their doctor, hopefully get a diagnosis, prescription, or something to help cure their ailment. But if they didn't get that, then they would revert to the god Asclepius in his dream temples, where they would go into the temple and sleep and hopefully get some kind of dream that would provide some kind of healing for them. So, yeah, very much an interweaving, even to this day, because that symbol of medicine, the two snakes interweaving through the rod, that is the symbol of Asclepius. So, there's an
I
interweaving
love
there.
that you said that because we talk about misconceptions, and I'd love to share one with you. That's actually
Yeah.
the symbol associated with the Greek god Mercury, or I'm sorry, not
Oh, all
not
right.
Mercury, Hermes. Hermes, yeah, Hermes. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Hermes. Okay.
So maybe
Mhm.
fact check me. I always encourage people, don't listen to what
No,
I
yeah,
say just
yeah.
because.
Mhm.
And that's
I
how I
agree.
sort of
Yeah,
learn things is I'll just
yeah.
Google it really quick. But it's actually one serpent. And there's a lot of interesting stories that go behind the difference
Okay.
between the one serpent and the two serpent. And that's because
Yeah.
Hermes is the god of merchants,
Uh-huh.
whereas
Yeah.
Asclepius is known and more, appropriately associated with healing.
Right.
So
Mhm.
true medical institutions, usually the ones that are funded by the state and what forth, are the one snake, whereas the
The
private
one
ones
snake.
are two. A
Two
little
snake.
bit of marketing
Oh my
magic for you
God, you
there.
just blew my mind, Jesse. That's
So
so cool. Yeah,
it's
I'll have to keep
subliminal,
an
it's
eye out.
subconscious, it's powerful,
Yeah,
and it's
it is
everywhere you
though.
look, whether you notice it or
Yeah.
not. And the people who make those decisions, they know what they're doing. And
Yeah.
sometimes
Oh,
it might be
right.
an
Right.
innocent mistake, but more often than not, a lot of money and research goes into how those things are presented. So
Yeah.
we
One
digress a
snake
bit,
versus
but
two snakes. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to be on the lookout for that.
it goes so much deeper too. If you look into the story of Asclepius and how he was brought among the stars as the 13th constellation, it was because he was struck down for healing too many people. Hades had gone to Zeus and he said, "We can't have this." And this takes a lot of deep research to find, but he basically said, "You're stealing souls." And the story goes that there was like some royal prince or king or something of those lines. Like I said, fact check me. Please share what you find in the comments. And essentially, he came to Asclepius and asked for his son to be healed. It was mortal. It was fatal, whatever his disease was. Some accounts claim it could have been cancer before they knew and understood what that was. And there seemed to be no method of healing that worked. And then there was some sort of vision or incident of a snake crawling under the door, and Asclepius decided to stab it with his staff, and the snake died. He thought to himself that he had saved the son from some sort of snake bite, because apparently they were locked in the room together until he would heal him. So then
Okay.
something interesting happened. The second snake crawled under the door, and it actually brought an herb in its mouth to the first snake, and he witnessed healing. And that's what he used to heal his son, as a certain
Mm,
concoction of herbs. So that's the full mythology between the one snake, two snake. Where there's truth and where
fascinating.
there's fact, I have to say, any story concerning the two snakes makes me wonder because I want to know more about the one. And then talk about the science, some actual practical healing where they would take a wound and drill the worm infection out with a staff like tool, and that's where that comes from as well because that was a common ailment of the time. But plenty of
Mhm.
symbolism there. Love merging the spirituality with the science. We could go down a rabbit hole to talk about
Oh
that, but I
yeah,
want to get back to the
definitely.
science for a second based on what you
Yeah.
said. So
Mhm.
far off track, it's hilarious. But proving lucidity, if you're studying yourself as a case study, what a great place to start. It's your word against the world. Who cares
Yeah.
if they believe you or not? Because that's your own subjective experience. That should be all that matters anyway. But how do you prove that in like some sort of master's thesis that you did become lucid?
Yeah, right. So the few people that did that were Keith Hearn and Stephen LaBerge, which I'm sure you know. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, they both kind of had the same experiment, Keith Hearn before LaBerge, where they went into a lab, and slightly different in the fact that Keith Hearn found someone who was good at lucid dreaming and being able to intentionally induce lucid dreams, and he brought him into the lab. Stephen LaBerge figured out how to intentionally lucid dream himself. So he kind of came up with a technique that would help himself induce lucid dreams, and then he studied himself in the lab. But what they both essentially were getting at was bringing someone into the lab who could have a lucid dream and then measuring their eye movements. Because with rapid eye movement, you have eye movements during that sleep stage. And if you can have intentional, predetermined eye movements, then you can actually show that someone was in the dream and intentionally made that decision to move their eyes in that way. So you have a pattern like left, right, like these guys did. And then these people, Stephen LaBerge himself, and then Keith Hearn had a participant, I believe, by the name of Alan Worsley. And they went into the sleep stage of REM and had a lucid dream, became lucid, and then signaled with their eyes left, right. And that popped up on the machine that measured the eye movements, the electrooculogram. So that showed scientifically and objectively that this thing is real. It's not just people saying that they're in a dream and they realize that they're dreaming, but people can actually show in the moment that they are, in fact, in a dream. Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you there. Yeah.
Sorry about that. So I was so into what you were saying. I forgot the mute button. No, but honestly, so in a lab setting, you confirmed it for yourself. Is that what you're saying? For your own thesis?
Oh, I'm saying it was confirmed way long before me.
So yeah, so for your own sake, for the study. Were you in a lab setting?
For the thesis.
For the
Yeah.
thesis, yes.
No, I was not in a lab setting.
Okay.
I
I'm
was
just curious to what that looks like, because not to mince words, I'm very interested in the sake of online research and obviously the bias that comes with self-reporting. So
yeah.
maybe we can talk a little bit more about how to I don't know, let's call it externally validate somebody's experience. How would you go about doing that without a lab?
Yeah. Well, so let's just talk about in the lab first, okay? And then we can talk about out of the lab. So in the lab, the way to do that is what they call these signal verified lucid dreams, where there is that predetermined eye signal of you're going to look left, right when you become lucid in the dream. And then we will see that on the EOG when you look left, right. So that kind of validates it, right? So that's how you do it in the lab to kind of make sure everyone is 100% on the fact that we are in fact lucid dreaming, right? Now, outside of the lab, what that looks like is a little bit more of a gray area, right? Because we can do online surveys of people and ask how many lucid dreams have you had, but that is very dependent on what their definition of lucid dreaming is, right? Because some people confuse lucid dreaming with just dreams of control or vivid dreams or that sort of thing. So validity is a real concern here for sure. And that's where the lab studies definitely have more power of explanation over the online studies, because the ones in the lab, particularly the signal verified ones, are the ones that we know are in fact true lucid dreams where there is a certain amount of self-awareness and the pattern gets recorded. So those we know pretty much 100% objectively, that's not even a word, with objectivity, that it is in fact a lucid dream. Other than that, we do have to refer more to the subjective side and see what people think.
Okay, so I heard the EOG. That's a new term for me. I guess that
Mhm.
makes sense that there is a device that watches your eyes. Does it make
Yeah.
contact with your eyes? Is that what it is?
Yeah, so it's pretty much little
On the
electrodes that are
sides.
about right here. Yeah, and they'll measure the eye movements,
Okay.
and
And
that's
then it's a EEG too, right? That's the other thing to confirm that you're actually in fact asleep and dreaming. Is that like the twofold
yeah.
approach?
EEG is for measuring brain waves. So that is more used for the sleep stages, right? Knowing which, in fact, sleep stages you are in, because there's the light sleep, dream sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep, and deep sleep, all that kind of stuff. So EEGs are more for brain waves. EOGs are for the ocular, the eyes, and that's how we're not we I was no part of this, but how people in the past proved that lucid dreaming existed,
We are
specifically
now by
Keith
spreading the
Moon.
gospel, right, of Asclepius.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah.
all right. So,
Yeah.
so let's just say, humor me here. So, is rapid eye movement and signal verified lucidity observable from the third person without a measurable device? Like, if I were watching you sleep, creepy. I know, but let's
Hmm.
say we're 4.5 hours into the night, or let's just say we even have a device set up of some sort that can monitor
Yeah.
you closely and pay attention to your eye movements. Can you see that
Mhm.
from the outside looking in without the eyelids being peeled back?
Oh, without any sort of machine, to a certain extent. I don't know if you would actually be able to kind of pinpoint those exact moments when someone actually signaled lucidity with like a left right movement, because the eyes dart around all over the place with rapid eye movement sleep. And it's not even humans. You can see this in other animals, right? You can see this in your dog or your cat when they're falling asleep. The eyes are darting all over the place. They might be kind of twitching their limbs and maybe barking a little bit. But yeah, that's rapid eye movement sleep.
That's my cat. He just hit me in the head with a mirror. It's okay. Didn't even know he was down here. All right, B. I'll
And
get you
that
back
cat
later, buddy.
has, yeah, that cat has dreams too.
I know.
It
That's
has the
that's
rapid
really
eye movement
remarkable.
sleep. Yeah.
But is that how we verify animals have dreams? Is with their eye movements?
I mean, it's one of the ways that we verified it. And surprisingly, you would think that this was something we determined a long time ago. It was not. We just found out about REM sleep, the one of the most pivotal, craziest stages of sleep, in the 60s. And that was from scientists observing this fact, observing their pets dreaming and making these eye movements, and from individuals who were saying, we were watching people sleep, creepily enough, as scientists, and they were looking left, right. And we said, what were you dreaming about? And they said, a tennis match, you know,
So they would
or,
wake them up then, right?
yeah,
To say,
exactly. And
we saw you
yeah,
were
it's like
looking around.
yeah, you kept the
Uh,
ball kept going back and
I
forth.
wanted to have. I'm gonna keep having some. I wish somebody would be like the designated fact checker, man. Like if I were Joe Rogan, Jamie, pull this up, right? Somebody, please. I thought I could be wrong, but I thought that a certain pattern of eye movements were less regular during REM, and that that's how they use signals. Like if we more frequently look left, right during REM, part of the signals were more vertical in nature. I don't know if there's anything to
Mm,
that, but yes, I'd be more interested to know the details on how they, what the signals were exactly. And
yeah.
again, like to go back to the human aspect of things, I love animals. I have 7, and I'm soon to be a chicken tender. So, I could go down that rabbit hole, but maybe we should call a veterinarian to join us next time or something. But anyway, what I'm wondering is how can we verify lucidity externally, outside of a lab setting? So is there, and to minimize, no, to maximize credibility. And I'm
Mhm,
thinking like, for example, one thing that I discovered recently is that there's a condition called omnilucidity. And you touched on it briefly when you
mhm.
said that you're not a natural dreamer. Some people are, some people don't have to have any effort. And a lot of people actually report it as being somewhat exhausting, and they would
Yeah.
love to learn that it stops. And due to the subjective and almost niche nature of, dream work, a lot of people don't realize that this isn't how most people dream. They
That's
find
right.
out at,
Yeah.
a later stage, and, then, they're in search of answers or a sense of connection. And it's so rare, that I
Yeah.
feel like establishing a network of self-proclaimed omni dreamers and going through some sort of, external validity for like a vetting process to get these people to the lab is how I would go about, funneling, a system of volunteers into, a more reputable, study later on. And it goes,
Yeah.
it's really an offshoot of an experiment I tried to launch as somewhat of a citizen scientist, through just straight up volunteers. And I know there's a lot of bias that goes with that. But a lot of people were reporting, these crazy outliers of experiences like, lucidity on a weekly basis or a nightly basis or every
Mhm.
time they dream.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what took me down that spiral of wondering, well, how, if we set up a camera, had somebody witness it, used some sort of device like a smartwatch or an
Yeah. Yeah.
Aura ring
Mhm.
to measure their cycles, that's all, sort of, it's usable data. I don't know how
Yeah. Yeah.
objective
Yeah.
it really is, but let's kind of get back on track because I would love to hear more about you. And honestly, your work is amazing. I found out about you through luciddreamstudies.org, and
Oh, okay.
took your 14-day course, and I really think that's a valuable resource for the community I've shared recently.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about what that is and what your mission there.
Yeah. So I was so passionate about lucid dreaming and trying to get more lucid dreaming material out there, not only on the science side, but on the education side, that I decided to start a nonprofit. I Not sure if I was exactly qualified to start a nonprofit, but I decided to do it anyway because I felt like there was a need there. There's a need for more education and research on lucid dreaming. So since that falls within the nonprofit criteria, I felt like that was just the perfect example to go with. Also, because I myself, having gone through the academic institutions for an education, I wanted to provide research and education outside of academia. Provide a model for uh, teaching an education that was less expensive than a college education, because I think that's gotten a little out of control recently, and then also provide a model for research outside of academia. Because quite honestly, Jesse, it's very difficult to do valid research outside of academia when you don't have millions of dollars behind you for, say, pharmaceutical experimentation and that sort of thing. So I wanted to provide a model for each of those, and that's why I felt like a nonprofit for lucid dreaming was the way to go. So I started a 501c3 certified through IRS nonprofit for lucid dreaming and education, and that was part of what you were talking about there with the free course on lucid dreaming was the educational side.
That's amazing. I love everything you said there about, the cost of education and gatekeeping information. I think it's so important as it pertains to dreaming because it's so subjective that,
Yeah,
unless we sort of open the gates and get as much information as we can, and then go through some sort of verification and qualification for usable, verifiable data, then I think, we're sort of playing with one arm tied behind our back because I heard a lot of crazy statistics, but something along the lines of 52% of people have had a lucid dream before. Just anybody has
yeah,
had one in their lifetime. And
yep,
then
yep,
maybe 20% of those people can lucid dream once every month or something like
mhm,
that. So again, that's a fraction of a fraction there.
yeah,
So,
right.
and then something like less than 1% of that population can recreate lucidity in a lab setting. Why do you think that is?
Where'd you get that number from? I'm curious because
Down the
that's
rabbit hole, my friend. Just
oh,
Google.
down the
Yeah,
rabbit hole.
I
I
can't give you
love
any
it.
sources. That's not what this is
Yeah.
about.
Well, let's keep in touch because I'd be very interested in that. But yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
would certainly agree with that. To the extent we know through enough research these days that those are kind of the basic numbers for now. About 50% have had at least one in their life, and about 20% have them frequently, which is about once a month or more. And then it goes even further than that. Like you were talking about omni lucidity, where people claim to be lucid in all their dreams, which is something I would like to investigate scientifically because, it to me as a scientist, I'm skeptical, honestly, of this omni lucidity concept. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have a lot of lucidity in a lot of their dreams, but to have full lucidity in all of your dreams, that's a pretty far claim. And
Out of a
there hasn't.
pool of 250 participants, I have 6 people claiming omni-lucidity. How many of that population do you think are valid?
Well, I don't know how many are valid or how many are not. And this is where me as a scientist, I just want to get them into a lab or at least hook them up to an EOG and see how many times they do the signal verified lucidity throughout the night. Because psychology is already a very new field in terms of science. When we think about science and all these other fields, particularly like medicine, thousands of years old. Psychology is very recent science. And if we talk about these very niche fields like lucid dreaming, well, that's even even more rare. So I just want more research. I want more science. So yeah, if anyone, please reach out to me if you are claiming omni lucidity and you want to research this in more of a lab setting. I want to too. So reach out to me and maybe we can get something going here and move the field a little bit further, because here's the reason I'm skeptical, Jesse. Okay. So we barely know how many dreams a night we have scientifically. We barely have what they call operational definition for dreaming.
Thank
And
you so
what
much for
this,
saying that.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
That's
So,
very important for people to understand that.
yeah. And that's just fancy lingo for saying operational definition is as a scientific field, we don't have a general consensus for what a dream is and what it isn't. There's a general consensus, but we're still trying to figure that out, especially the fine details, because there's a lot of gray area, right? So we don't even know how many dreams a night we have. If we were to liken it to REM sleep, we have 4 to 6 times a night. So we have 4 to 6 dreams a night. So then are you lucid in all those dreams all the time? But then we know for a fact that we have dreams outside of REM sleep, non-REM dreams. So are you lucid in those dreams too? So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered through research. And that's one of the reasons I started this nonprofit for lucid dreaming. The Organization for Lucid Dream Studies was to answer these questions.
I mean,
So
it's wonderful that you're offering all of this to the public. I mean, thank you again for your contribution to this field,
yeah.
because it really is an awesome website. And again, maybe just tell people where they want to go. I see we got 8 people listening, so thank you for stopping by. Plan to talk for maybe about 10, 15 minutes longer. And then if you have any questions, please, we'd love to hear it in the chat. I'm not even sure if the chat's working. So maybe if somebody's here and can hear this, you go ahead and leave a message now. But honestly, the 14-day course is chock full of great information. And what I love about what you did is you make it personal to the user. So you're immediately starting with a reset and sort of calibrating based on their current routines. And it starts with sleep. So I
Yeah.
think that's often glossed over in people in the quest for controlling their dreams, right? They lose an appreciation for the fundamentals that get you there, which is just quality sleep.
Yeah.
And I've learned a bit more about the science of it myself, and just shared this with somebody recently. They often say that dreams are deep sleep, but I think it's fair to say it's quite the opposite, right? Dreams are actually they occur at a lighter stage of sleep.
Yeah. So if we're talking scientifically, then yeah, it seems like there's more dream content in the light stages and in REM sleep. So in general, there's about three different types of sleep: light, deep, and REM sleep. And light and REM sleep seem to have the most dream content. Deep sleep, not so much. There is some dream content there, but it's a little bit different. So yeah.
So, sorry to interrupt. I just noticed when I popped out of the full window that somebody said, yes, they can hear us. So, thank you for chiming in. Somebody commented a couple minutes ago, and we'll address your questions at the end. We'll use them as a placeholder for our conversation. But um, yeah, so I'm still confused about the stages of sleep and whether to call it light, deep, or what. If you wake up from a dream, you feel groggy. So, like, that's why I guess people consider it deep sleep, right?
Yeah.
But it's important for people to realize that balanced sleep isn't just dreams. And,
Yeah.
you know, you're not, maybe there's a natural mechanism that prevents us from remembering our dreams. And there's a reason for why that is in terms of mental health. So I would encourage people to, start with just good sleep. When you get more quality sleep, you have more dreams, you remember more, you wake up feeling refreshed. And
That's right.
that's just my take on it really quick, because I think people sort of become obsessive over just lucidity, which, arguably may not be healthy, based on some of these personal anecdotes from the Omni community. So, again, I'm going to encourage you guys to reach out to Dr. Gish if you feel like you do lucid dream every night, if you're aware you're dreaming, and you want to connect on a deeper level and maybe even explore some sort of, study into your own sleep. I think valuable. That's valuable for all of us as a community to learn more about what that experience is like. So thank you again for extending that offer, and I'll definitely let the six people know that we're going to
Please
be
do.
checking their credibility,
Yeah,
because
yeah, please
here's
do.
an interesting thought. I think it's more likely to stumble across a sociopath or a psychopath. I don't know how you define those terms in psychology, but how do we determine those statistics either, right? Or are we just measuring the people who got caught? So maybe we can delve deeper. Let's just extrapolate here and talk about sampling. How do you
Uh-huh.
sample for an online study or something like Omni Lucidity? Or let's just back it up and say the general population, how many of them know that they're dreaming?
Oh,
Thank you,
I
Amina.
mean, yeah, I mean, general population, like it's like we were just talking about the stats. It's roughly 50% of them have had at least one in their life. In terms of sampling, it just depends on the study, right? If I'm trying to do a lab study of people who claim omni lucidity, then I am going to reach out to people like you, Jesse, and try and connect me with those types of people. If I am trying to do a study on lucid dreamers, then I will try and find those places that host the most lucid dreamers, right? So it
Exactly.
very
Yes.
much depends on the study and what exactly we're trying to investigate. If we're trying to investigate this claim of omni lucidity, where someone is lucid in all their dreams, then all it would really take is a handful of individuals or even one, right?
Case study. Yeah.
Where, yeah, a case study where we bring in the appropriate technology and that person knows the drill of signaling their eye movements or what have you. There's also talk of other ways to verify and validate lucidity, like breathing patterns and that sort of thing. But you know, that's the way we would do it. So it very much depends on the study. Is the sampling
Yeah. So
technique?
let's follow this syllogism down the line.
Sure.
Um, we're studying lucid dreamers. We want to go to the places where they are most frequently. So how do we go about sampling? Let's say in a modern age, we're going to go to every major social media platform, and specifically any online forums where the dreamers exist. Sometimes they overlap. and
Yeah.
essentially say, hey, anybody who wants to be a part of the largest ongoing lucid dreaming experiment ever, right? Make it glorified and flashy and as
Oh
slimy and
goodness.
marketing as possible, and just try to get everybody who's into it for a quick study. I mean, one of the things that I found fascinating was more fake statistics because I love numbers and numerology, right? So something like, I don't know, 86% of survey participants will respond to 3 questions as opposed to 56 will respond to 4. It's
Yeah.
only
Hmm.
one difference of a question, but
Yeah.
it's maybe something in the mechanism of our short-term memory processing that makes us gravitate towards the power of 3.
Hmm.
So, so let's say we just take as many people as possible who want to do it and say, "Hey, can you answer these 3 questions?" Do you feel like any substantial qualitative or quantitative data can come from, just a 3-question survey?
Oh, I mean, it, yeah, it's kind of a general question, but yeah, I would say so. I mean, there are surveys out there, validated scales and questionnaires that are only a few questions long. You know, particularly I'm thinking more in the fields of mental health, where they will have a longer survey that then gets shortened into a 3 to 4 question short survey to make it more digestible and more likely for a large amount of people to fully complete. But yeah, you could definitely come up with insights through only a couple questions on lucid dreaming. Certainly. Yeah.
Okay.
What, so here's an example. All right. So here would be an interesting one, actually. So a lot of people think that they know what lucid dreaming is because lucid dreaming is starting to get a little bit more popular, a little bit more into the vernacular of the general public. So what would be interesting is a first question saying, have you ever had a lucid dream? Just yes, no, how many have you had, frequency sort of thing. Second question would introduce the definition of a lucid dream scientifically. So, in the scientific field, we kind of have come to the conclusion that the basic definition of lucid dreaming is awareness. You're aware of the fact that you're dreaming while in a dream. That's a very basic definition, right? So, we would provide that definition to the people. First question is, have you had a lucid dream? Yes or no? How frequent? Second question is, here's the definition of lucid dreaming. It's awareness of the fact that you're in a dream and you know that you're dreaming. Now, have you had a lucid dream? And answering yes or no, and how frequent. That would
So
be
you're
interesting in of
studying
itself.
studying the
Essentially,
amount of
is
people who claim the lucid dream and
yeah,
who actually abide by the technical definition.
exactly. That would provide just the basic insight of perception of lucid dreaming, right? Because like we were talking about before, I have come across many of people who think a lucid dream is just a dream that's very vivid or a dream where they were able to control stuff. And
Yeah, those
that's not
valence
necessarily the
curves.
case.
So
Yeah,
let me
exactly.
just say briefly, we do have a few comments coming in. There's somebody in the comments section who claims omnilucidity, and they want to know where you're located or if they can test it remotely. So it's quite a common phenomenon. What I'm finding, the more
Right.
networking I do, so I've been surprised by that. The amount of outliers I've come across, and subjectivity and bias aside. I think it's worth asking, how do we go about vetting and filtering? And one of the more interesting concepts was a panel of verified Omni dreamers who just interview them about what their experiences are like, because it seems that their perception is consistent in the way that we have these recurring archetypes or themes in regular dreams. Um,
Mhm.
I would even argue before doing that, before asking people about their operable, definition of lucid dreaming, that we should perhaps consider a larger pool of participants. And maybe since you proved yourself just through sheer will in a matter of 1 month that anybody can lucid dream. And I do believe that with my heart, that most people can. Not anybody per se. There are some, mental health conditions or sleep, you know, uh, conditions that can prevent it from being established effectively. But otherwise, I think if
That's
you
right.
can
Yeah.
get a normal night's sleep, that it is a learnable skill, is what I would call it for most people.
Yeah. Mhm.
So maybe starting with just people who don't know about what lucid dreaming is and ask them, do you remember your dreams? Because that was sort of what hook, line, and sinkered me, was just waking up to the fact that we do dream. And so many people, upon placebo effect, which I've heard some great thoughts from you on Skyfall Blind Dreamers YouTube about placebo effect is real. So just if you never heard that you dream, and I told you tonight you could wake up inside the dream and realize through awareness that what was happening, then for some reason statistically you're more likely to have a lucid dream, and it may be harder to
Yeah.
recreate over time. But I would argue that starting with, you know, uh, not going around knocking on doors, grassroots approach. Hey, do you remember your dreams? No. Shut the door. Hey, do you remember your dreams? Yes. Okay. Thank you. And then just measure that statistic. But it seems so rare. And that's why I think the work that you've done and, the resource you created in your website is so valuable for
Yeah.
anybody, because making the science accessible is what it's all about. So thank you for letting me pick your brain a little bit about, conducting an online study and how you go about creating an experiment and outside of the lab setting, because that's
Yeah, of
something near
course.
and dear to my heart. Um,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate people like you, Jesse, who care about the science, because that's, in my mind, science is one of the best tools we have right now to further our knowledge as a species. There's a lot of things we think, but when you put them to the test, it's that's really what separates the fact from the fiction, and we advance as
let's
man
take
and
it down
woman.
a philosophical level now. So if the advancement of science is the most important evolutionary tool that we have in our belt, why?
I would say because it is a method of thought that encourages replication.
That's exactly what
You
I knew you
know,
were going to say.
that's
That's it.
that's one of the biggest things, because when we can intentionally replicate a phenomenon, we we know a decent amount about it, at least decent enough to replicate it, right? We may not know the how and why, but if at least if we can replicate it, then we know a decent amount about it. So I think science, especially in these very small fields, psychology being one, relatively speaking, and lucid dreaming being even further, only having probably a few hundred scientific studies in existence to this day. I mean, comparatively speaking to the field of medicine, which has a countless amount, probably millions of studies at this point, then yeah, we need to lean more into the science
Lean
and
more
see
into the
what we can.
science because it's replicable, right? It's
Yeah,
provable to an extent.
exactly. Yeah,
So
provable to an extent. So that's an interesting point you bring up with provability. Is with science, nothing is ever proven, really. You
it's a
hear so
theory.
much. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So you hear so much about proof, but honestly, we still don't even know how gravity works, right? So in terms of but gravity is very repeatable. We can show time and time again that gravity works, right? So, yeah. So, yeah, it comes down to that repeatability, which increases our knowledge of the phenomenon a little bit better.
So
And
that's why I argue against lab-based lucid dreaming studies, because I think it's not replicable. I think that the entire
oh,
atmosphere of a lab setting is not conducive to proper sleep, and that's why it's so rare. So I heard an
okay,
interesting take
okay,
from Skyfall specifically on his
mm-hmm,
YouTube interview with
mm-hmm,
you. By the
yeah.
way, the only video I could find from you, you need to put yourself out there more, my friend, because
Oh, I
you're
know.
you're
I'm
full
I'm
of
terrible at it.
hidden
Yeah,
gems.
yeah,
So what I heard was a suggestion to conduct international remote studies so that neither party is compromised in their sleep. But yeah, that's a rabbit hole to go down a whole nother time. It's just a matter of what technology, right? With a smartwatch, ring, a
yeah,
camera, watching your eyes, and a witness, can we
yeah,
implement and make accessible is
yeah,
one of the key terms I took away from your website to
yeah,
more
yeah.
people.
Yeah, because that's one of the parts of our mission with this organization is making lucid dreams accessible to all. But I want to touch on a point that you had talked about with the lab studies versus the online studies, because that's very interesting. It's true. It's not as natural, right? Because it's in a lab. But I do want to push back on this a little bit because I do want to see more lab studies. And I'll tell you why. First of all, the signal verified lucidity, big component for pushing this into the mainstream, because there are still scientists to this day who say lucid dreaming isn't real. Well, all we got to do is look at the science these days, especially the signal verified lucid dreams. I mean, how can you argue with a predetermined eye movement that shows up in the dream stage, right? Or even like you were saying, maybe eye movement's not a thing, maybe it's breath patterns, but the signal verified either way. So let's envision this a little bit further. One of the things that lucid dreaming has shown to be helpful time and time again, study after study, is nightmares, recurring nightmares. And particular, this is a symptom of PTSD, right? So here's what I envision. I envision a future where people who are suffering from PTSD can walk into a local lab that is focused on lucid dreaming, and they can have, with a certain amount of guarantee, a chance of having a lucid dream. And there's been a lot of advancement in inducing lucid dreams in the lab in the last few years. So I don't want to say exactly names because I can't remember precisely who, but there's been a lot of lab work done in the last few years where essentially people, even non-lucid dreamers, can walk into a lab with these scientists who know what they're doing, and there is about a 60+% chance that they will have a lucid dream right then. So if you were to take someone who never had a lucid dream, walked into a lab, had a lucid dream right then, and they were suffering from PTSD that might be able to resolve their issues, or like my dissertation, suffering from chronic pain where the before was a 6.5 out of 10 on the pain scale, and the after is a 2 out of 10 on the pain scale with one single lucid dream. If you were to bring them in, essentially guarantee them a lucid dream for the most part, and then have them walk out the door feeling happier, healthier, that's what I would love, just to increase our quality of life overall. And that's why I think lab studies are so important right now.
I'll share one other word magic with you that I learned on my journey through many rabbit holes, especially as it pertains to Asclepius, is the term incubation. I love etymology and the origin of words, but incubation relates in the medical field is to like lay down, right? But as it pertains to a dream, it's going to bed with a specific intention to have a certain dream. And I would like to encourage more people to practice dream incubation because it's sort of like a prerequisite for lucidity. You can have specific dreams and not be aware that you're dreaming, but wake up and have memory of it and still have some sort of healing benefits. But what you talked about and what you've done with your research is so important because I think people can heal not only physically, but mentally. And, nightmares resonate with me personally, and that's what got me into this whole thing. So thank you for, just helping the community in the many ways that you have. I think we've done a great job of balancing our approach with the light and the dark and talking about how lucid dreams can be great and beneficial, but also those who claim to have them frequently may also suffer some other, mental health effects. So,
Definitely. Yeah. And on that note, one of the groups of people who claim the most amount of lucid dreams naturally, who don't even try, is people suffering from narcolepsy. And this goes to show that it is both a mind practice and a body practice, because on the physiological side, people with narcolepsy, they're going from the wake state to the REM stage of sleep immediately, right? Which is exactly kind of what happens with lucid dreaming, is this blend of the REM stage of sleep, other stages, but REM sleep and awake state. So a lot of people with narcolepsy, from what I understand, report intrusive lucid dreams, too much lucid dreaming. And that's also a population we want to help. These people seem to suffer with too much awareness during the night. They don't want to be awake and aware while they're dreaming, and there's a certain amount of restfulness that comes with unconsciousness, right? So there's a balance to be had there for sure.
It reminds me of a study. So you talk about the people, I'll talk about the animals this time, and what I'll call the lucid lab rats, and maybe the lucid LaBerge rats, we'll call them. And the experiment took these terrible, and I noticed it's 3 o'clock now, so we'll wrap up with a few closing thoughts after this gruesome story about drilling holes into rats' heads and sticking them on a treadmill to measure their brainwave activity and forcing them to run until they fell into water, which they hate. So they would climb back up on the treadmill and run back to the front. And as soon as they would get to the front, they had a remarkable ability to doze off immediately and sleep for the entire duration it took them to reach the end and wake themselves back up and run to the front and keep doing this process of torturous exhaustion until they realized they dreamed the entire time. I think there's something remarkable about the restlessness and a metaphor there for how the brain can respond under a constant context of dreams. And it speaks to really sleep hygiene and why all stages of sleep, whether we're dreaming or not, the restful parts for your physical element, as well as, the lighter or deeper, doesn't really matter. More REM-like stages of dreams where you might be more activated mentally. So all very captivating for me personally. I can't tell you enough. Thank you so much for just making the time to talk to me. I can't wait to even just hear, a fraction of what you said listening to this back later. And thank you for whoever joined us as a part of this small live audience here on Facebook. Hope to share this to a larger audience later on YouTube and other platforms. But maybe we can just close out now with, for some listeners who are eager to actually start lucid dreaming, since we've sort of gave them a disclaimer with the risks and also, hooked them with a carrot. Let's talk about how, maybe they can start their journey, and maybe you can share some practical tips for success, maybe from like the people who've done your 14-day free course. Maybe you could share some inspiration.
Yeah, sure. So one of the basic places to start is, like we were talking about before, is sleep hygiene. A lot of people, especially in the Western world, aren't getting enough sleep. Most adults, 99% or so, need the 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So if you're not getting that, then you probably need more. There are genetic mutations where you can handle less and be perfectly healthy, but chances are you need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And if we look at the research shows we're not getting 7 hours. We're not even getting 7, Jesse, let alone 9. So we need more sleep, most of us. And we need that intention. Yeah, exactly.
7.
Right.
Hold on. 7 hours and 8 minutes. Woohoo! Yeah. I don't think I was asleep that whole time, though. That doesn't count. Hey,
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
sorry to interrupt.
Well, you. And no, just to sidetrack even further a little bit is a lot of these devices, they're actually not great at measuring our sleep. So that's one thing we need to be careful of with all these devices measuring our sleep recently, is not paying too much attention to our scores or the points with these devices, because when we're looking at it scientifically right now, as the technology speaks right now, we're about 60 to 70% accurate with these devices. So helpful.
Hey, that's not bad. That's not bad.
It's not bad, but can also be hurtful,
Yes,
right? If we put too much time and energy into it. Well, I only got a score 70 at it instead of a 90.
I think the scores are quite superfluous. It's as superfluous as however many likes I have on this stream right now.
Yeah.
And really just like the one-on-one subjective interpretation is what matters. I find it interesting when the data or the score, correlates to how I feel. And perhaps that's where the true wisdom lies, is, applying it for yourself. If it works, great. But maybe for me, it's a tool for mindfulness, right? Going back to the awareness, just being more
That's
mindful
exactly right.
of my rest, my activity level,
Yep.
my stress, and, not really getting too caught up on what the numbers say, but tuning into how you feel and using whatever
Yeah.
tools you have, including technology, to sort of tap into that potential.
Exactly. Exactly. One of those
So
tools being the free 14-day course at
thank you.
luciddreamstudies.org. If you want to learn how to lucid dream and kind of just dip your toes into the waters of lucid dreaming, then with the nonprofit, we created a free 2-week course, self-study online, self-paced. So however slow or fast you want to go, just reading through this material that introduces you to these concepts of sleeping and dreaming and lucid dreaming. Because I'll tell you, I started at nothing. I did not remember a single dream when I started lucid dreaming. I had trained myself to forget all my dreams. And that's essentially what it comes down to, is training, right? Because a lot of other cultures will emphasize dreaming. And so their kids grow up remembering their dreams. But in the Western culture, we do not emphasize dreaming. And thus we kind of train our kids to forget their dreams. I think unintentionally is the way I'm going to put it. Um, but I had to retrain myself. I had nightmares as a child, which definitely could have developed the lucid dreaming naturally, but instead I trained myself to forget. So anyway, long story short, I remembered nothing when I started my lucid dreaming journey, and within a couple of weeks, I had 4 or 5 epic long dreams a night where I was spending an hour and a half writing it down in my dream journal, and I was like, I don't have this kind of time to do this. But yeah, intention goes a long way. So more sleep, more dreaming, more lucid dreams. And that 14-day course has all of that in it. It has some basic material on sleeping, dreaming, and lucid dream induction techniques.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that free resource and making it accessible to everybody. So it
Yeah.
really does help, guys. I've tried it myself. It's a great way to check in and make it a part of your evening routine. Just pull up your phone, keep the tab open, go to the next module. Fill out a few quick responses that really force you to do some introspection and reflection. And like you said, set the intention to just
Yeah.
sleep better, remember more dreams. It'll take you a long way. So now we're over an hour. We've got 7 viewers, Dr. Gish. So that's a new record for me personally. Congratulations.
Yeah, yes. Round of applause. Yes.
So yeah, there was plenty of great questions. I just wanted to again thank the audience for being here. Now we'll scroll back through and see if there's anything worth mentioning. And if we don't get to it now, leave a comment later and I'll be sure to reply. If I need to, I'll reach out to Dr. Gish and see if he can offer insight. But I've already taken enough of your time. So let's dive into these questions, see if anybody
Sure.
has something for you specifically. So I'll start at the top. And it's kind of like retrospective memory here because we're going back now 45 minutes ago. But a Facebook user, I can't see the name, unfortunately, it says there's definitely been hundreds, if not thousands, of lab studies, but you can prove it at home too. So that's what we're talking about. How do you prove, outside of a lab that, lucid dreaming is occurring in real time?
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be something like the mass, right? Where we have these masks that are really good at detecting the eye signals, and we could we have the funds to give these masks to potential participants, just kind of mail them out.
Like a home kit.
And
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, like a home kit. And then they'd put them on, they'd have a lucid dream, they'd signal verify their lucid dreams, right? And then that would be more an objective way of putting it. So
That's a great key
that
term, signal verified. That's my
yeah,
takeaway from that part for sure.
exactly. And that takes the right technology and the right amount of funding in order to really, make that more available. So
Somebody also commented on that same line of thought, usually through a longer series of more distinguishable eye movements. So I would imagine it's something erratic that normally isn't observed with the EOG, like diagonal, up, down, some kind of crazy sequence.
yeah, you could. Honestly, the left, right, left, right, left, right 3 times in a row is from what I understand, it's obscure enough to
Okay.
actually signal lucidity. But yeah, there's certainly questions there.
Somebody said we discovered that the direction and amplitude of rapid eye movements during REM sleep revealed the direction and amplitude of the ongoing changes in virtual HD. Not sure what that is. Thus, rapid eye movements disclose gaze shifts in the virtual world of REM sleep, thereby providing a window into the cognitive processes of the sleeping brain. Credit to a random Google search. Thank you for doing that, Jamie, since it only says Facebook user. Um, I'll check that after the fact and update in the comments if I'm able to find any, citations here. It would be great if you could provide that for me, just based on what you were looking at. If you're not here, I'll just say, take everything with a grain of salt, especially on this show.
Yeah. And
But
even what I'm saying, that's the way to do it, is just doing your own research and forming your own
so
opinions for
I
sure.
guess what they're arguing is that your eyes indicate where you're looking at in the dream world as well as in real life. I don't know if that's true. I actually
So,
don't know.
yeah, that was kind of like the preliminary research done when we first discovered that REM existed. Was one of the first questions was, do these eye movements correspond to what we're seeing in a dream? And the answer was relatively, but not exactly.
I agree.
So
Yep, exactly.
when I was explaining before with the people watching the tennis court, watching the ball but go back and forth. Yeah, that
Palm.
was an
Yeah.
actual study. And then there was one up and down, and I think they were watching an elevator or a ball or something like that. So relatively, but what we do know now is not every eye movement during REM corresponds to something we're necessarily looking at during REM.
It's more encoded through your third eye vision, your internal vision. It's almost like I believe there's some Japanese studies looking into this again. Um, take it with a grain of salt, but I think they're examining how eye movements correlate to brain patterns and how they can sort of decode imaging that way. That's sort of like the frontier of dream recording through eye movements, but kind of scary to me
Yeah.
to record the context of dreams, even if we're just getting a general who, what, when, where, and why type deal. I think some things are meant to be kept sacred in that way. Maybe that's why lucid dreaming is so hard. Anyway, I see people
Yeah.
commenting as
Yeah.
we go, so I'm going to try to rush through some more of these comments really
Sure.
quickly. Can you see the messages? Yes, so that was quite a while ago. Amina said, "Wonderful combo. Thanks for dropping by, Amina. Wondering if you might need to be tagged." Nope, I can see it. I just had the full window open. Sorry, guys, I'm a noob. Is it a lucid dream if you are somewhat aware you are dreaming, but you just continue to dream? So, yes. So what I'll say first, and I would love to be fact checked by Dr. Gish here, is that lucidity, much like clarity and control, are on a sliding scale. So you can be somewhat aware you're dreaming. You could be hyper aware you're dreaming, and it could be at various points of the dream itself, varying degrees of lucidity. So you might be aware and kind of forget and get sucked up into the plot, and then wait a minute, what was I doing again? This isn't right. And then there's another layer of false awakenings where you think you wake up and you're still dreaming. Inception did a great job of playing on that concept, especially with
Yeah.
the kick. So time dilation is another study based on the eye movements, where they determined that time should pass relatively similar in a dream as it does in the waking world, and that's despite a lot of common beliefs. And maybe we
Yeah.
can get into that in another time, because I myself have a different personal experience. But
Yeah. Yeah.
let's keep
I'd be
going.
interested in that too. Yeah. Because
Let's think about
that
yeah,
was a study done in looking at the normal uh, lucid dreaming experience. But what I would be interested in is people who are using their dream control abilities to dilate their time perception and how long it feels like time wise if you use that dream control to dilate it and make it seem longer than it is.
next
Because
episode, theory of
yeah,
relativity.
yeah, there you go.
So yeah, thank you so much for saying that. Actually, we're getting into some neurology here. Somebody mentioned neuroadrenaline. I think it's norepinephrine.
Yeah.
And adrenaline are brain chemicals that are responsible for people forgetting their dreams. So they were talking about maybe we are
Yeah.
biologically hardwired to forget, and there could
We
be
are.
a reason, a
Yeah.
real evolutionary reason why.
And that is a safe assumption at this point, honestly, because if if we are to trace back the origins of dreaming, let's just make it simple and talk about REM sleep, right? So if we were to trace back that stage of sleep, specifically rapid eye movement, and how far it goes back to reptiles, right? So reptiles are a long time ago in our evolutionary
Snakes.
ladder. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So these animals do not have necessarily any advantage for remembering their dreams, right? In fact, it's a disadvantage to remember their dreams in the sense of you have a snake, he has a dream of his predator, the hawk. He has a dream of this local hawk
Or the
dying.
owl.
Yeah, or the owl. And the owl dies. So then the snake is thinking, oh, I can sunbathe in the field because the owl is dead. Turns out the owl is not actually dead, and then swoops up on that snake and eats it and kills it. So then it furthers that chain is no longer existent. So we evolved to forget our dreams. But what's interesting for us as an animal is we have this ability to set the intention to remember our dreams. So we can kind of consciously evolve. We can set this intention to remember our dreams, remember more of our dreams, and become more lucid through psychology, essentially, through our own mind.
It seems like
So,
lucidity is a conscious effort to overwrite that natural mechanism to forget our dreams, and the best way to distinguish waking life from the dream experience.
it's
The
one of them,
antidote.
I would say. Yeah, yeah, I would say it's one of them. I think lucid dreams, from a personal experience standpoint, anyway, I would say lucid dreams are more memorable than my non-lucid dreams. But I'm not sure if that's the same for
Yeah.
everyone.
Maybe to wrap up with their comment, the neuroadrenaline. Uh, that's why you wake up and remember your nightmares. More emotionally charged dreams tend to get,
That's exactly right.
interrupted and
Yeah.
reported. So
Yep.
there's some good evidence there.
Yep.
Brain chemicals, and then where are you located? He told you his website. Definitely, if you're experiencing omni lucidity, reach out through luciddreamstudies.org. Is that correct?
Yep. LucidDreamStudies.org.
Okay, so what if two people could lucid dream into the same dream experience? I mean, there's been several incidents shared to me where two or more people recalled the same dream, down to painting the journey vividly. I wonder if it's possible to replicate that with lucidity. So maybe just to refer back to some OGs in the psychology field, Jung would say these are universal archetypes that we're experiencing due to our, collective environment. Like something,
Yep.
for example, that might have happened around the year 2020 is a collective experience that we shared and probably influenced a lot of people's dreams. Ironically, I think it woke a lot of people up to the potential for dream work. So maybe you
Yeah,
can
I would agree.
touch on that a little bit, Dr. Gish. Do you think it's possible for two people to enter the same dream experience, or is it? I guess there's still plenty of value to be had if people are dreaming of the same thing, right?
Yeah. Honestly, just I don't know. I don't know, and that's
Good
that's
answer.
part of the reason why I studied this why I started this nonprofit was I want to research things like this. I want more research to get more evidence because there really isn't enough evidence for me to kind of have any kind of valid stance for me personally. I haven't seen
Yeah,
enough evidence to say whether or not that is possible. I like to keep an open mind because I think there's a lot of things that are possible. I think we have just started to understand the power of the mind. So there's a lot of things we don't know. Like I said, the field of psychology is a very young field. So would I say it's possible? Maybe, but I'd like to do more research on it. So if you're good at lucid dreaming, you feel like you've shared a lucid dream with someone, reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. I would love to maybe even do a study out of this and, get more science out there on these topics because we just don't know enough these days. So
True scientists. We always want to learn more. So that's great. And I know it's something that actually a lot of people are interested in. So I would love to learn more about that as well. I think to go back to Jung one last time, it's the difference between coincidence and synchronicity. It's up to you to define the meaning and its worth. So let's try to get caught up. We're maybe 10 minutes out on the comments. I'm sure there's not many more, and we're about an hour and 15 minutes in. So let's go. Yes, there's levels of lucidity. You can be aware of dreaming. Sorry, 1 second. I lost my place here.
you're good.
It's possible the lab settings affect the results of the experiments. That gets complicated. Yep. I think it's worth considering how we could maybe
Oh,
make the lab setting more
yeah.
conducive to a better night's
Yeah.
sleep if we're really valuing that as like the,
Yeah.
piece
Well,
de la resistance.
exactly. And hopefully with the advancement of technology, we won't have to worry about that as much. We can just send you one of those masks or devices that is a lot more accurate. And because we do know that the lab setting does indeed influence dreams. And in fact, it's one of the triggers to lucidity with these participants, because these participants come into the lab, a very unusual setting, and then they hook up all these devices, which is very weird, and go to sleep with all these devices hooked up to them, which is very weird, and people watching them, which is very weird. And of course, that filters into the dream content, right? We know
Stress
that
is
from
also
the
affects your recall, right?
stress. So in incubation, when we were talking about that sort of thing, you go into a lab, you're having thoughts of the lab, you're thinking of the lab while you're falling asleep. Of course, you're going to have dreams of the lab. And that lab is going to in turn trigger lucidity because that's unusual for you. So yeah, it
Incorporation is
will,
another interesting, rabbit
yeah,
hole to go down. You talk about
yeah,
incubation, incorporation, kind of like cousins or sisters, even.
yep, yeah,
Incorporation is like you hear the beeping of the devices in the lab, and that incorporates to like a car accident in the dream, or let's think of
yep,
something more positive. Slot machine, you won $1 million, right? So,
yeah,
I'm a big
exactly.
fan, and impressions on the subconscious, and I want to measure, kind of both. But yeah, I think those are all great points about why a lab setting is useful, but could also, have its drawbacks.
Yeah.
Um, Somebody else wanted to hear about dream sharing. So that's two different users. Just out of the 10 people, we've, a dozen people or so who've been
I
here
mean,
with
it's
us.
it's a fascinating topic, right? It kind of goes back to basic philosophy of, is there uh, physicalism versus idealism, essentially, right? Like, are we just these physical meat sacks that are having this conscious experience? Or is there something that survives outside of the meat sack? And that's a fascinating question that I, I think interests anyone, right? It's
It goes back to
fascinated me for a long
Einstein,
time.
right? Nothing's ever
Yeah,
created or destroyed. So, and the consciousness has got to go somewhere. That's what I'd
yeah,
like to believe personally, but
yeah.
who knows? Somebody said clinical dream therapy should be a regular practice, I believe. Thank you.
A
Yes,
hundred
that's what we're
percent. Yeah,
talking
no
about.
argument there. Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, let's start with how
definitely.
are you sleeping? How
Yeah,
are your dreams? Oh, I don't remember my dreams. Well, you
yeah,
might be rushing awake, and that can, maybe again, it's cultural, and we could
yeah,
argue
mhm,
that while we're fighting our biological hardwired drive to forget dreams, at the same time, there's a lot of cultural programming that sort of lends itself to what we value and the where
yeah,
our circadian rhythms run in today's society, right? We're not
yeah,
getting natural light. We're not
yeah,
um,
yeah,
using the daylight to our advantage. People are working third shifts. We're having screens odd hours directly, before bed, and there's plenty of studies about how that affects your sleep. So we'll kind of just say that dream therapy and sleep therapy, right? Let's not forget the first step there. Somebody tagged somebody, so thank you for sharing the live. Somebody shared Jamie, thank you. They shared the article from the Google. I assume that's that's what that is, but I'm sorry, I don't know your name. You could comment it now, I guess. Oops, I'll provide that link in a message. Yeah, so they sent it as well. All right, we're almost there. You can have lucid dreams and forget them, of course. That's why
yeah.
dream
And there
recall
was
is
actually
important.
a study on people with narcolepsy that proved that exact thing.
Great.
There, where they were hooked up to the EOG, the thing that measured their eye movements. And they looked at these because these people had a lot of lucid dreams, right? So they showed through this study that there were, in fact, instances of people where they signaled, right? The left, right eye movement, but then they woke up and they didn't remember it. They didn't remember it, Jesse. They signaled the left, right, but then when they woke up and the scientists asked
Not
them,
surprised.
hey, did you remember a lucid dream? Or did you remember anything? Did you have a lucid dream? They're like, no, I don't remember anything.
I didn't even sleep. I've been up
Yeah,
this whole time.
exactly. Right. So that study was the perfect example of people with the signal verified lucidity that literally didn't remember the subjective experience of it. So
amazing.
yes, you can have lucid dreams and forget it.
I'm so
we definitely
sorry
know
that, the people deal with those sort of conditions. I'm like a unofficial insomniac, but narcolepsy is a whole nother situation. I can only imagine what it's like to deal with that. So my heart goes out to those people. And, again, thank you for furthering the field of research. Somebody said it's not Jamie, it's Josh. So at least it's another J name, Jay's Rule. It's like, okay. All right. So that's exactly what I was talking about. Great. So it sounds like a lot of what we said resonated with the audience, whatever few people joined us for live. I thank you again. If you made it this far in the video, hopefully you watched it on like 1.5 times speed at least, and listened specifically to what Dr. Gish said, because he had a lot of gems to drop on us. So maybe we'll just close it out by saying thank you. And if you still have questions that go unanswered, just drop them below wherever you're watching the video, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Dr. Gish, is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we get off of here? Or, maybe just let the audience know where they can find you, and what you're working on currently?
Yeah. So Organization of Lucid Dream Studies is a nonprofit. LucidDreamStudies.org is the website. And for social media handles, it's at Lucid Dream Studies. And yeah, we just hope to further this field of research in addition to helping people have more lucid dreams. So that's kind of our vision, is making lucid dreams accessible to all, providing affordable education based in science to help people understand and experience lucid dreaming, while also advancing the field through action-oriented research, stuff that people can actually use to better their lives. So that's the idea. Yeah, feel free to reach out. Oh, I don't hear you. You might not.
All right. I wasn't actually saying anything. It was a reality check. So let me just say, thank you, Dr. Gish. Again, one last time. We're going to end it there. Good night and sweet dreams, everybody.
Take care.